All right. Hi, I'm Matt, and in this episode, I'm going to show you how to make a cage like that one in just one day. All my secrets are coming out in this episode. Let's go.
Here's the challenge. We need to make the cleanest install we possibly can. This is going to be a basic 4-point cage. It needs to work around the stock interior, and because it needs to be painted, we're going to have to bolt this in. That way we can take the cage out, clean it, paint it, and then put it back in the car. Let's go. Kevin's going to start off by setting up some layout. The layout here, which is just the tape on the ceiling, is going to help us keep track of where things are, including the center line of the cage. Then with some templates, Kevin begins building a guide for our roll hoop. These templates are very useful. They have length, they have angle, and they can be modified quickly with just a pair of scissors and some tape. And then they're used as a gauge to tell us exactly what kind of structure we need to build. We developed these templates because we were tired of all of the troubles we were having from the other techniques. The most common technique is just to try and measure the inside of the car, but this usually takes a couple of guys to do, and it's very error prone. But if you want to do this by yourself solo and you want to be quick and accurate, the templates are the only way to go. And now we're ready. We just follow the template as a guide. It tells us the distance from bend to bend and the degrees for each bend. Kevin then measures everything out, marks it, and cuts it. Now we love the Sawzall technique. It's right by the car. It's not a cutting station somewhere else in the shop or out back. It's just right there, which speeds things up a lot. You want to minimize the amount of travel in order to be efficient. Remember, we got to get this thing done in a day, so we can't be wasting a single minute. In order to be efficient and get a cage built like this in a day, everything has to be very close to the car. Kevin's now loading the tube in the bender, and he's making all the bends according to what the template says. And in order to minimize the amount of errors, he puts the template on the floor and puts the cage over the top of it. You can see we're using some 1, 2, 3 blocks here to help get everything into position. 1, 2, 3 block lines up the center line, so that way we're always on center. And then we're using another 1, 2, 3 block to mark the next bend. And it's a lot of rinse and repeat at this point. The key to remember here is that you don't want to make mistakes. Mistakes lead to rework. So everything that we're doing is trying to eliminate as much rework as possible. Go into the car once, make your cuts, make your bends, and go back into the car. That's it. You don't want to redo tubes, redo measurements. So now Kevin's just making some simple 4 plates. You guys know how to do this, easy breezy. Get it all into position, mark the floor, and drill your holes. Now that we're done with that, it's time to do the crossbar. Now this could not be easier. It's straight and it's got some simple angles. The string line trick is our favorite trick. What a time saver. We're going to get all of our length measurements using the gator clips, and you'll see that here in a minute. And while the string was in, we got all of our angle measurements. Now the gator clips are just magnetically held in place, just like you see here, and they're used to then measure the cut length, just like that. Kevin then cuts it free, and it's time to get ready for the notching. So the way that we notch it is we use these 2 magnets to hold the tube onto the floor, center line mark it, and we use those center lines to now set up our notcher. Very important, when you go to flip the tube, you're not going to want to screw that up. You screw that up and you got to remake this tube. So be very cautious when you flip the tube and do the other side. Now that Kevin's done cleaning it all up, time to drill a couple of vent holes. When you weld these tubes up, the ventilation is very important to allow gases to escape. Otherwise, you'll get bubbles in your weld, and you're going to have to grind those out and start all over with those. Time for the back bars. So we're going to do the exact same trick with the templates. We're going to use them to make a mock-up, and then that mock-up is going to guide us. Just like before, there's a straight section for getting the length right, and then there's an angled section for getting the degrees right on the bend. Cut it, clean it, and fit it. Now here, this is really cool. These are bolt-in joints. These bolt-in joints can be bought off the shelf. We don't make them, but we got them off the internet. Just Google bolt-in roll cage joints, and you'll find a whole bunch of them. Kevin's TIG welding those into place, and then he's fitting it into the car. And then we got stuck. We had to make these gigantic holes here because we couldn't bolt the back bars in. There just wasn't any way for us to get to the bolts and attach the nuts, and you can see them all right there. So we had to make a clearance hole. There's no way around it. It just had to be done. So once we had that clearance hole in, we were able to install the nuts and the bolts, hold the plates where they needed to be, and tack weld it all up. And now that everything is tack welded all up, it's as simple as just unbolting it. And now we just pull the cage out and start welding it. Now the important thing to remember here is this was an economy build. We were trying to do it efficiently, quickly, and cleanly. And so the MIG welder is the go-to option here. After it's all welded up, we threw some paint on it. Now you don't have to do this. It does add a day at least, because you're going to want to let it dry. Once it's all dried, we're bolting it in, and man, does that look good. Oh, it's so beautiful. I love that color blue, and it's fitting in so cleanly. We did have to do some trimming with the interior panels. There's no way around that. It's just gonna have to be done. So you'll see here at the floor mount, we did have to cut into the carpet a little bit so that way it fit around the floor mount, but it's tucked in nice and neat. And finally, the back bars. They tuck in nice and neat behind the rear seats. Now in the next episode, I'm gonna teach you guys how to create a website from scratch, brand yourself on social media, and run a few ads so you can turn this into a side hustle that rakes in the cash. Let's go!